Welcome to Wizards of the Tower
Roleplay.
In this episode, it's a viewer's question. Using minis and 3D layouts for your game settings versus flat top tokens and chits. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower
Roleplay.
This episode, we're going to be talking about a viewer question in one of our episodes that somebody asked in one of our posts. And it has to do with the layouts of your game using the actual three-dimensional things, minis that look like minis, versus flat maps, tokens, and chits. And it has to do with something called Aphantasia.
Right. So, Aphantasia is the inability to picture in your mind what is actually going on, in a story or while reading. Most of us who read, construct, mind movies inside as we read.
Right.
When we're reading a book about people traveling through a forest, we imagine the travelers moving through the forest. Well, some people have that inability. And one of our viewer questions was, what's the practicality of using minis and 3D layouts such as these minis, these 3D layouts, as opposed to just using a flat map and chits? Because for some people who have a highly developed imagination, so to speak, flat maps and chits are fine. They can imagine.
Or even none of that, just imagination, theater of the mind.
Exactly, theater of the mind. And they can imagine that this little round chit here is an orc chieftain.
Yeah, this M&M or this Skittle.
Yeah, this little thing here, these pennies that I'm putting down are fighters and that sort of thing. Some people are perfectly fine with that, and other people need more stimulus. So, it's an interesting question because we've always incorporated 3D aspects to our games.
As much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
As much as we possibly can. We've always... Now, I've used minis, I've told this story many times, where when I was playing, I think it was 1980 or so, I went to my local game shop and was playing with some of the local gamers. And we were in, I believe it's T1, the Hidden Shrine of, I can't even pronounce the name, Tumakchakan, and there was a crab. And I ended up getting killed because the dungeon master decided that I was in the room even though I said I was not in the room. And at that point, that's when I decided I was just going to start using miniatures. And, and gridded maps.
Yeah.
So that way, I knew where players were. And you were always in control of your mini, If you weren't there, then make sure that you're not there in that location. Make sure you move it out of the room. Otherwise, if your mini's there, that's where your mini's at.
Right. So, it only makes sense. Okay. It only makes sense that if you're on a gridded map structure, or something like this, say that your character is on the stairs, okay, and someone says, okay, this creature appears in this room down in here, and it attacks. It's like, wait a minute, it attacks. I'm up here on the stairs. It's the other guy who's down here. That's who's getting attacked. And so it can make the difference, between one thing or another, during the action and play. But I think what this viewer was asking about is it enough for certain characters who have a really developed, not characters, but players who have a really developed imagination, is it enough to use just flat maps, chits, drawings on the maps, whatever? Or should you make the effort to construct 3D settings with minis, in that sort of sense, to help out those folks who have aphantasia, who may not be able to imagine exactly what you're doing, without a little bit of visual aiding.
Right.
So, and then one of the specific questions that was asked from the viewer is how to deal with polymorph or wild shape. Do you have, say,
The appropriate miniature.
the appropriate miniature for each part of the wild shape, or Bale polymorph or polymorph? You know, if you have polymorph where someone turns into a bear, do you have a bear mini then that you put down for that person, or do you just say, okay, everybody, I'm a bear?
Yeah. Or if you get turned into a rabbit.
Right.
You have a rabbit
Do you
mini.
have a rabbit mini?
So, my view on this is first of all, when it comes to your character, I like to try and have a miniature that represents my character as much as I can.
Yeah.
Now, in the past, you couldn't do that, but now when you have things like Eldridge Foundry and Hero Lab, Hero Forge, whatever the other mini.
I think it's Hero Forge.
Hero Forge. You can pretty much custom design
You can.
any mini you want.
You can.
And have it 3D printed for you, or 3D print it yourself,
Yeah.
and then paint it up however you want. We do that a lot now, because now we can create our characters to appear as much as possible.
Right.
But in the past, you'd find something that represented it as close as you possibly could, or used whatever you had available.
Right.
Maybe you don't have that elven wizard character. Maybe you've just got a male wizard. He's got the big long beard. Okay, I'll use that for now because that represents my mini,
Sure.
my character.
And let's say, for instance, that you have a tavern scene and you have a bunch of townies. Do you have actual townies minis that you put down? A tavern wench, a server, a barkeep, ruffians, local ruffians, whatever. Or do you just have like some chiclets that you lay on the ground? Okay, these 3 chiclets here, this is this and this is that. The question is, of course, is what is enough? What is it? Is it enough to do something simple, or should you make the extra effort for the benefit of your players to come up with 3D aids or 3D enhancements?
Right. My view on that is, you do what you do best. If that's what you need to do it. If you can't do it, then just flow with whatever you can. I like doing this. I've been doing miniatures, and I've been using terrain for quite a long time now. I just think it adds depth to my game.
Yeah.
But I know in our current game, we don't use a lot of 3D terrain. We're starting to get the DM to start implementing it because I've got so much of it. So where we have it. And he's starting to get into the flow of using it.
Yeah. How much investment do you want to put into this?
Yeah.
Really, as a DM? Do you want to invest in...
You want to go out and buy Dwarven Forge, which is going to cost you
Yeah.
$400, $500, $600 just for a small set.
Do you just want to draw it out? Or do you want to actually create a dungeon with walls? Do you want to have characters? It really depends on what you feel is appropriate for the people you're playing with.
Yeah.
Now, if you do have people who have, who suffer from aphantasia, and they have an issue with trying to imagine that this circle is a tower, or this is, an issue, or these little tokens are people.
Maybe it's best if you can to print out something,
Yeah.
whether it's black and white or color.
Well, not even print out. Okay, because, and here's the thing, there are so many figures available now. You can buy packs of people. Packs of townies, packs of orcs, packs of skeletons. And not only that, you don't even have to go to a gaming shop to buy that. You can buy all that stuff online, and it's cheap, super cheap. You don't even have to paint them up as really, much as you want to. Yeah, you can primer them, you can paint them a little bit. But having the figure itself really can sort of, enhance the game and provide people with a 3D reference for what you're trying to do. That's what's kind of important about it, There's an old story about the origins of D&D with Gary Gygax and some of the people he used to play with. They had a big giant table like this that was a sandbox in the basement. Yeah. And they were redoing Gettysburg over and over again. And they had the hand-painted minis of the Confederates and the Union soldiers. And they would move them around in the sand and put them on hills and everything like that. And I have to imagine that it must have been really interesting to be able to move the forces where you needed them, to actually have the reference of this force, that force, as opposed to just like, now keep in mind that people also used to do pen and paper. and they would do very descriptive pen and paper games where they would mail stuff back and forth between each other regarding pen and paper images or pen and paper stuff. If you had Aphantasia, I imagine that would be very difficult to open up a letter and read it where they were telling you about cavalry and you just could not picture cavalry in your head.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating. So it really depends on how far the DM wants to go.
Yeah,
Really. Yeah.
Printed minis, you could go so far if you wanted to of cardstock or
Sure.
or even paper minis that you print out.
Now, we've done that before with ships and stuff like that. We've had
Well,
cardboard.
we had trees initially that we had.
We had
didn't
cardboard
have
trees.
We had some paper trees that one of the players printed out.
Yeah,
and we threw those down.
And we would lay them down as these are trees. Now, did that work better than having a 3D tree? Because we have a bunch of 3D trees over there. I'm not going to say it worked better or not.
Did it work? Yes.
Did it work? Yes. Now, the thing is, was it adequate? It was probably adequate. Now, did it really create the atmosphere that we wanted? No, it didn't. The best way to create the atmosphere you want is to actually have the stone towers, have the 3D references, have the staircase, have the ladders, have the trapdoors. That's the only way to really create, this powerful 3D reference that you want. But is it for everyone? No, it's not for everyone.
No. And as far as us, we don't have a mini for every monster or every townie or every polymorphed wild-shaped creature. We use what we have. We've got some rats, we've got some badgers, we've got some dogs, some foxes. Don't have rabbits. In fact, my character for our current game has got a baby bear, and I had a big bear out there, and I'm like, wait a minute, that bear's too big.
Yeah.
And I went, and I was like, oh, I've got some baby bears. I'll use the little baby bear, the small bear.
Yeah. So, the thing is you can do something like that. You can have, a certain selection of animals or things, but should you have every single thing just in case someone wants to polymorph? I mean, that's up to the DM, depending on their mini collection.
Or even the player. If the player wants to start turning people into rats, well, maybe they should be the one supplying the rat.
Yeah, maybe they should have some rat figures. So I'm really happy that we are able to look at this viewer question and address it. It's an unusual sort of observation because it talks about people who have difficulty fantasizing or creating a fantasy image in their head. And I am completely sympathetic. I don't have that problem. I've always had the mind movies thing going on in my head when I read. So it's never been an issue. But I can imagine how difficult it would be for some people to have that problem.
Yeah, so to kind of elaborate on that is, in our current game, the DM threw some insect creatures at us. And he was calling them this, I think they were ink hags, and he was trying to describe them, and we just couldn't imagine it. We couldn't, because the way he was describing it. And he finally showed us the picture and like, oh, okay. And I went out and I found a mini for it and printed up some 3D minis and slapped some paint on them, and then we had them for the next game.
Yeah, and that worked really good when we did that.
But, a lot of times it's best, if you don't have a mini, if you've got the book or sheet of paper, hold it up. Let your players see it, so that way they can imagine what they're seeing. Because if they're fighting, there's an insect creature and it's got these mandibles and it's got some spikes on it and it's got bug eyes. Okay, I don't really get a whole lot out of that.
Yeah.
But if you tell me this creature looks like an earwig, and I've seen an earwig, then I can kind of imagine.
Right.
That here's this creature with 6 legs that's got pinchers on the back end of it that that's kind of creepy looking. I can imagine that as this giant insect that we're fighting.
Right. This all, of course, plays into person-to-person gaming like we would around this table. Online gaming is a lot different. Basically, you're just hearing a voice over your headphones, or you're looking at Fantasy Grounds or something online, and you're seeing a map with, little token-looking coins moving around the map. Now, that can be enhanced with sound effects, music, 3D images, something like that. What is the program that you use that you build? Tailspire. Now, Tailspire is pretty cool, I gotta say. I don't know if we've ever done an episode on Tailspire.
Our intro.
Yeah, our intro to this is done in Tailspire. Yeah, Tailspire is pretty cool. I gotta say, it's really enhanced our game, and I love it. I think it really helped, especially when we were down in those deep desert tombs. it really helped us to imagine the traps that we were encountering, where the walls and the floors would fall out from underneath us and that sort of
Well,
thing.
the walls, you just couldn't see a wall.
Right. It really helped us imagine what we were getting into,
Yeah.
and how we could get around those traps. So that really helped. But is it absolutely necessary? It's not absolutely necessary. And even, is it practical? It doesn't have to be practical, and it may not be practical. But it really is up to the DM and how far they want to carry it, and how much you want to help out your players.
Or even your players, if your players want to contribute.
Yeah. So,
anyway, I think we're going to end this episode of Wizards of the Tower.
role play.
Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word, ring the bell, leave a comment. We will always respond back to your comment. I think we're up to 353 followers now, which
That's nice.
we're happy.
That's nice.
Happy about. We're slow. If we get comments, saying about, we use AI art. Yeah, we use AI art because we don't have somebody on staff that we can pay big money.
I'm sorry about that. To be honest, not to go too far into this, I'm an artist. I have a master's degree in art, studio art. I understand how an illustrator might feel that everyone is using AI. But as long as it takes for me to do a good sketch, we can create an AI image in just minutes.
Yeah.
It is necessary for us to do this for our show, to get our show out on time.
And a lot of times, too, if we talk about a product, we've had one that we actually had a sponsorship, and that was the pixel dice.
Yeah, the pixel dice.
That they actually gave us a dice to talk about.
Yeah.
Everything else, when we talk about something like when we talk about our 3D terrain or our DM's Tower, these are things that we have out of our pocket that we want to just talk about because this is what we use.
Yeah.
It's not us suggesting. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to use it. If you like to use it, please use it. If you want to know where we got it, I'll be happy to tell you where we got it or 3D printed it or whatever. But anyway, don't forget, once again, to like, share, subscribe, and spread the word.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.